Dr. Carol Temple has decades of experience in public education. Now she wants to bring her experience to the Charleston County School Board, where she wants to become the next Charleston County School Board member to represent District 9, James Island. I speak exclusively, Dr. Temple, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Dr. Carol Temple, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's always good to be with you, and thank you for your service to the community.
Oh, you're very welcome. Happy to provide a service to my hometown here. Really love it here. I know that, the last time I spoke with you for Quintin's Close-Ups was probably 2020 when you ran for House District 115. And now I understand that you are a candidate for District 9 for the Charleston County School Board, which will cover James Island and other parts of that area. Tell me why, Dr. Temple, why Charleston County School Board, why now?
Well, I'm a real advocate for public education. So my original plan was to run for the legislature because I felt that there were a lot of changes that needed to be made at that level. And so I ran and I lost the election 5 votes. But anyway, the passion I have for education continues. And so I'm a retired educator. And I'm at home, and I still am interested in education. And the thought of, having all the experience that I have in Charleston County and with the new single member districts, I just feel that it is my duty to be out there to share what I know and try to help the school situation. So that's it. It's a passion for public education, and I believe that we can make a difference in so many different ways. I tried to make a difference when I was a classroom teacher. I tried to make a difference when I was the curriculum specialist for math and science and technology, and went on to be an assistant principal and principal. So I've been on a constituent school board. So, when somebody has all these experiences, I don't want them to go to waste.
And Dr. Temple, you talk about the school situation and how you want to change that. And let me ask you, where are we right now with that school situation, particularly in District 9, I should say?
Yeah, well, we have a set of really good schools now. It's interesting in this district that the schools for District 9 are all situated on James Island. And I am fully aware that the district covers a part of the peninsula of Charleston. So I don't know what schools people are using in that part of Charleston. They could be using some of the countywide magnet schools or downtown schools, that kind of thing. So I'm going to just kind of speak mostly to the James Island schools. And the situation in our schools is that we have good schools out here on James Island. They rank very high in terms of overall student achievement. But we still have pockets of problems. Just because we're a suburban island doesn't mean that we don't have our own problems. We have a range. If you look at, I know you like data. So if you look at our schools, we know that the poverty rate is anywhere from 20% to 45%. So we have our issues associated with poverty, and we also have challenges in our schools. Now, I sit on a school improvement council, and a couple of years ago when we met, we looked at our reading and math scores, and we found that we had at that time about 20% of our students were not meeting the needs. They were below, any kind of approaching or exceeding the needs. And so we looked at trying to figure out, what's going on here. And the teachers were identifying things that would help the students, but we didn't have the reading or math interventionists. who could help those students. So there was, we had some resources, but not enough. So there were always some 20 kids who were on the waiting list. So our school improvement council then advocated for more reading and math specialists, and ultimately we were able to get it. So that was in one of our highest performing schools on the island, and the school with the least poverty. And so you look at it and you think, well, if that school is having problems, what about the others? And the same exists in the other schools as well.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Temple. What is the graduation rate right now in the James Island Charter?
It's pretty high. Let's see. I put the data out here. It's pretty high. It's up there around 80%, 85%. Let's see. Graduation, 90.2%. So it's very high at that particular school. Yeah.
Let me stay with that, because what percentage of students at James Island Charter actually scored a C or higher on algebra, biology, or English Gateway course assessments for the end of course for 2020-2021 semester?
Yeah, the data I have, been fairly busy with this campaign. So the data I have is from 21, and like the end of course, our students take the English 1 course, and there were 72% of the students passed that with a end of course exam with C or better. So, still 25% of our kids are still, having needs in that area. Math, the algebra, and of course was 62%. I'm not giving you the tenths of a percent. I'm kind of rounding up here.
Yes.
And then biology was a little higher, around 73%. And then the U.S., which most students take as a sophomore.
Right.
And then U.S. history and Constitution, not too good, 44%. So, there's been a lot of questions about, some of the exams, what kinds of questions are they asking, and how does it compare to the standards, and the time that you have to teach. Sometimes we're finding that there's just too many standards to teach within a year.
What are those standards right now?
Well, all of this, South Carolina adopts curriculum standards for K through 12 in every single grade level and every single subject. So those standards are posted on the website. The standards are developed by teachers, experts in the field. They're reviewed by parents. They're always there for public review, and then ultimately approved by the legislature. So there's a lot of standards, that are created. And I have to tell you, when I was working with science, and we were trying to get our standards together for, especially for K through 5, I would meet with the teachers, and we'd talk about, what's appropriate for kids to learn. Like, oh yeah, they can learn that. Oh yes, they can learn that. Oh yes, we can add that in too. And so finally we're looking at it and we're like, well, look at all the things that kids can learn in an age appropriate way, but then how much time do we have? So then we had to, work on cutting back on some of the standards to try to make it a little bit more realistic to teach. So, but that's the standards process, and it goes on. Usually, the state will review its standards every 6 to 7 years. Mm-hmm.
Now, going back to those numbers over at James Island Charter, were there any growth in the reading and math? Obviously, the MAP results.
Well, the reading, the measure that we have is the English 1 end of course exam. And then the one that's used about the math is the completion of algebra and, how students do on that. So those are the two scores they use. And then you'll get into the, SATs and right. ACTs, but we don't necessarily get school data
Right.
from those individual students will get their scores.
Yes,
So I don't
ma'am.
know what that would be.
Now, what would be the average ACT score for the 11th grader at James Allen Charter?
Um, let's see. No, I don't think I have that, Quintin. I don't have that.
No worries. Let me ask you this, Dan. What's the average year of experience for a teacher at Styles Point Elementary?
It's pretty high. I think it's around 15 years, something like that. South Point is a school that has probably the least fluctuation in teacher turnover, because once teachers get there, it's a pretty good situation to teach in. You know, parents support the schools. The kids are doing, pretty well. And it has its challenges. I mean, the pandemic showed, I know as the School Improvement Council, we were looking at food insecurity there. And so our students got busy and they did a couple of food drives and established a blessing box over at the Harborview Presbyterian Church. And I think that surprised the staff that parents were coming in with food insecurities and the loss of jobs, because basically that part of the island is pretty stable in the community. I mean, it only has about a 20% in terms of the schools, 18% poverty level, and that's probably students who are on the edge of that zoned school district.
And how many of those students are on that zone edge district?
I don't know. I mean, most of the students at South Point are zoned into that school. Now, the constituent boards may make changes that allow students from out of the neighborhood zone to go there for various reasons. It could be that their parent is a teacher, or somebody on staff is there, or there's a serious grandparent situation, whatever. So there are a few exceptions, but that the constituent board would make.
Now, what is that increased percentage, Dr. Carol Tempel, of the students making at least 1 year's growth on the NWEA math, reading, and math in District 9?
Well, I don't know. I don't have that data.
Well, no worries. Let me ask you this.
It's hard to get the data.
Oh, no worries. I completely understand.
You're asking, I'm thinking, Quintin, we need to have all your questions about the data, and then they need to report it that way.
That is completely unethical. Literally. I can't do that.
You and your data.
Yeah, well.
But the data is important. And the thing about it is, each school needs to look at its data. And this is where I'm a real advocate for school improvement councils and the school leadership teams really taking a look at what the situation is at their school and coming up with a plan that's going to meet their needs, because not every situation is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So I know that Styles Point, for example, and I know I'm a little bit closer to that because I'm on the School Improvement Council. I know that the principal met with the teachers, and they worked on refining some of their practices, restructuring some of the classes for reading and math and that kind of thing. And that's what you want to see. You want to see schools using their data and then making the adjustments that they think would help their students achieve.
Okay, let me ask you this, Dr. Tempel. Mm-hmm. Where is the achievement gap in your district between minority and non-minority students?
Okay, again, it's around, the gaps are pretty much parallel to the poverty levels in the schools. So that's kind of where you have to where you have to look, because we get the data, that shows overall what's happening, but then you have to look at the gaps, and it looks like it's pretty much paralleling the poverty level.
Now, have the poverty index and the achievement gap been parallel for, say, 2 years now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another question I wanted to ask you, Dr. Temple. Do you know how much the Charleston County School District actually spends on these standardized tests?
Oh, yeah. The district, the standardized tests are paid for at the state level. And, parents are starting to get upset about all these high stakes testing, because it's creating a lot of anxiety among the students, among the teachers, among the schools, among all of us. And, one thing I like to ask parents is, well, do you feel like your student is learning? How do you feel about it? And they're like, yeah, I think my kid enjoys school. They seem to, be doing their homework. They are learning. We can talk about things. They're reading their books. They're doing their math, that kind of thing. So we spend an awful lot of money on these high stakes tests, and you have to wonder, well, who's making the money on these tests, and what would it do if we could lower class size? And what would it do if we could increase teacher pay? So, the state spends a lot of money on the high stakes tests.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Temple, because I want to know, smaller classes would raise the student achievement by what percentage in District 9?
The research shows, I don't know the percentage here, but the research shows that student achievement increases with lowering class size. And the research shows that somewhere, actually it's lower than probably what we'd ever get to, is somewhere between 11 and 15 students per class would be ideal. And so when they have lowered class size, the achievement has increased. Now, some students do all right in bigger classes. But if you're a struggling student, you need more attention, and the teacher needs to be able to walk past you while you're doing your work and see maybe what's the problem and intervene at that period in time. But when you have too many students and you can't walk over all the books and stuff in the walkways, it's impossible to give students that attention. So we know it would make a difference. And, exact percentage, we'd have to look at that. It's hard to project that, but we know it would. The research is strong that it would increase.
Now, okay, how small is too small, and how small for how long?
Well, the younger students, need to be in smaller classes. And then the class size can increase as kids get a little bit older. So if in the K through 5 years, we really would concentrate on lowering class size, we would increase the reading, increase the math, increase the science and the social studies.
Sure.
And then, the class sizes can be a little bit bigger in middle school, and then high school, you can increase. But if you allow all these disparities and students not meeting their needs, then you can't follow that same reasoning.
What are the current disparities right now in District 9 among the students?
Well, again, the disparity is that, we have anywhere from 20 to 40% at some of our schools where the students are not meeting the state standards. So they need the interventions and interventionist as a special person to help close those gaps. We're not going to close the gaps if we don't put the interventions in place. And the interventions are not just a new book or a new program. It's the teacher who can work with the students to identify what is the particular problem. Is it, it could be among a lot of different things. It could be sometimes we call special needs. Okay, so it could be a dyslexia problem. I'm reversing the letters, or I'm not hearing the letters and they're not matching up with what I'm looking in text. So, it takes it takes that individualized services to figure out what is it for each kid, because it's not the same thing for each child. And that's where the expertise of the teacher comes in, and that's where we have to really support it. We need to continue professional development of teachers with reading and math, because a lot of teachers come in with their college education, which is 4 years. That's like I'm getting my college education, and they don't have all the tools in their bag to start with. I mean, I'm a real advocate, and this is why at the state level I would have advocated for longer periods for teachers to be in schools, working with mentors, having more time to develop the strategies and to identify learning disabilities early on. I mean, you just can't do all of that in 4 years.
What are the current student disabilities in District 9?
Well, we have students with special, needs. Some of them are the mental capacity, and other of them are learning disabilities, or attention deficit, autism. I mean, we have the whole range of problems in the district and in the schools.
Now, with that proposal, obviously, that you wanted to have in the state, with teachers having longer period time with their mentors, is that something doable at 75 Calhoun Street?
What is doable at 75 Calhoun Street is to have a genuine focus on professional development of teachers, and to offer the kinds of professional development that teachers need and want, because not every teacher needs every single thing. I mean, some teachers are really good. I can speak from science, for example. When I was working with science and the math, we had summer institutes to teach teachers how to really teach those two subjects. And my daughter-in-law was just out of college, and she attended it, and she said, "This is so good because I'm learning at each," she spent a whole week and then follow-up classes really learning at her grade level, because she was going to teach second grade. And so she participated in those institutes. And after she got through with that, she said, "Well, what do y'all have for reading?" And I said, "Well, what do you need in reading?" I said, "Usually that's what the colleges are doing well." And she said at that time, she said, "Well, we just learned how to make good decisions about good books. We didn't really learn about the skills with teaching reading." So that just says to me that what 75 Calhoun can do is to be sure that they have a robust professional development system in place to really help and support the teachers, because the teachers will tell you what they need more of, and that's where you want the expertise at Calhoun to be, to provide that professional development.
What do the teachers in District 9 need right now?
I don't know, because I have looked at their school improvement plans, but I don't see the professional development pieces listed. So where we would have to look for that would be, we'd have to get with the Department of Professional Development and really examine what professional development opportunities are teachers selecting, and teachers at the school level need to they really need to spend a little time identifying that and then send that information down to 75 Calhoun so they meet their needs. I mean, that's what I did in science. Was just constantly asking the teachers in the schools, what do you need? And they were like, okay, well, we get the biology standards, we're good with that, but we don't understand the physical science, the physics, the chemistry. So that's when we had professional development that helped them develop their understanding of those concepts. Because if you don't understand the concepts, it's hard to teach something.
Sure. Speaking of 75 Calhoun Street, Dr. Temple, as you know, the board is proposing to basically delegate the majority of its policy decisions to the superintendent. Let me ask you a basic question. What best practices can come out of all of this?
I don't know, Quintin. I've heard that the board, I've listened to them talk about that, but I haven't seen a concrete proposal that says, these are the policies we're going to delegate to the superintendent. So it's hard to know, what do you mean? I mean, that's just like a generalized statement. So what does that mean? And has the superintendent, weighed in on it that says, these are things we can handle, at the district or school level, that you don't need to be involved with as a board. So I don't know. I mean, you always want to, sometimes you get too over into policies. I understand there's like 250 policies at the district level. So it's like, well, are they all needed? They're probably procedural in nature. So if they're procedural and they can be handled, at the school level, or with the district staff, then, fine. But we need to, there's still legal things that the school board has to manage. So that's a discussion. I mean, I think they haven't clarified that part of it. They are looking at focusing on student outcomes, which in the strategic plan, you would be looking at the student outcomes you expect, and often and it should be data driven in part. So, I think if they could make their best thoughts about that right now, that might be helpful. But it's coming just a month before the election, so I don't know what it will look like. Today they're working on it. We'll see what that looks like.
Now, two follow-up questions before I head into the other part of this board manual situation. What are the student outcomes right now in District 9, and what procedural changes could be made right now at 75 Calhoun without the board and superintendent?
Well, okay, so I mean, I have the data. Each school has their own data, in terms of how the students did on their student achievement, SC Ready tests. They know that data. So the schools really need to examine what they are doing, what their needs are. Do they need better curriculum materials? Do they need to reorganize how they're teaching students? Like, if this is a group of students that need help with subtraction, then maybe they call it like walk to math or walk to read. Okay, we need help on this, so we're gonna have some special time on that, see if we can help with that skill. But the school and the teachers need to be involved with making that decision. That can't be just delegated from the district. Now, the district can set goals that we want to close this achievement gap. I mean, it's unacceptable to have so many of our students of color not achieving at high levels. But I think that the schools do know what they need to do, and the district then needs to provide the resources that they need. I mean, you read, so, I mean, a lot of my African American friends say, I don't get it. I read, I write. So, what's the problem here? But I think at the school level, it's just got to be addressed. Now, if it's that, schools, if it's that children need eyeglasses, then that's a wraparound service. I mean, you can't read if you can't see. So is that what's causing the problem? Is it that they don't have books in the home? Well, there are plenty of groups out there that would be glad to have, do a book collection so kids could take books at home. But it starts at the school level, figuring out what's needed to address the academic, mental, physical needs of the children.
Now, how many obviously minority students are actually achieving at high levels within the district?
Oh no, I've got the district data here. So, I mean, we have the students. I don't know. It's not broken out that way. It's given as a deficit.
Oh, okay.
Versus the numbers that would be achieving. That would be good. See, Clinton, you've got to write out all these questions, because we're all looking at this data that we get, and that's a very good question.
Okay.
An individual teacher would certainly know she's got kids who are achieving.
Yes, ma'am. And I know I have 7 minutes left for you, but let me ask you. I know the board is obviously. I know the items as far as the board head is proposing, basically delegating the majority of the policy decisions to the superintendent. And I know that the items being turned over to the superintendent are essentially items that still need board approval. So how do they make this make sense?
I don't know. I mean, without a concrete proposal of what they're thinking about. I mean, these board members have been, working with these policies, massaging, sitting in meetings, in executive session, so on. So what are they talking about? That's the piece I would like to hear from them. And they haven't identified what that is. So, I mean, they're saying, well, we want 50% of our time spent in meetings on student achievement. Yes, and students. Yeah, that's really good. So, what is it? What is it that's bogging you down? And they haven't told us that. So, I don't know what they're talking about.
Now, I know Dr. Tempel, the board has still not searched for its new superintendent search, if I'm correct, but is ready to dictate exactly how the new board should conduct the search. That is, should the search just be left for the new board to take care of?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think that they've had plenty of time to search for a new superintendent if that's what they wanted to do. At this point, they've identified 3 vendors, I guess, search groups. So, it's going to be up to the new board to really look at what qualities do we want to see in a superintendent and proceed from there. I just don't think that they should. The current board should make their recommendations. I mean, they've been sitting there for a long time. So yeah, make your recommendations, and then the new board will have to take a look at that and have serious discussions about, do we agree? If not, what else do we want to see?
Okay. If you were on the board today, or if you do get elected in November, would you keep the current superintendent, Donald Kennedy?
Probably not. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think if he wants to apply through the process, then he will have to, compete. My understanding is, and he may change his mind. I don't want to speak for him, but let me just say it this way: if he's interested in being the superintendent, then he will have an opportunity to apply like others who want to apply. And then you want to look at, well, who's applying and who seems to be the best qualified. If it turns out he's the best qualified, then, then that changes the dynamic. So I don't want to get caught in, would you hire him, rehire him? It's kind of a useless argument, I think.
Now, is it sensible when it comes to proposed changes to the district policy manual to have two manuals?
Well, I wouldn't be so caught up with two manuals. I mean, if that's what it was, then you would have, the administrative manual and the manual that is more focused on the board, obligation. So I don't see. To me, the two manual is not the issue. It's like, what are the tasks that need to be done, and which ones can be delegated, or else some of those policies are just about procedures and practices. This is how we're going to select curriculum. This is how we select textbooks. Well, the board might, if the board senses that policy is not working because something emerges that is wrong in the procedure, then the board should weigh in on that. But if it's working, just let the staff do their jobs.
Now, Dr. Temple, by dividing the manuals into the board and with the superintendent, do you believe they're actually creating a new governing structure?
Not if they don't change the policies. Because I would think that I don't think so. I think the superintendent and the district, I guess I can speak from my own personal experience on central staff. I knew which policies I needed to follow. I mean, as in the curriculum department, I knew the policies that related to curriculum development, textbook adoption, for example. So those are policies that central staff, takes ownership of, and they follow those. We follow those policies. So I don't think it's a new governance unless you'd have. It's not just sorting. It's not resorting those manuals or policies that's going to exactly change the governance of it.
Now, I know, Dr. Temple, just recently you got an endorsement from the Charleston County Democratic Party as far as you becoming candidate for the school board. But then, isn't this race supposed to be nonpartisan?
Well, yes, and I was asked by the Democratic Party to answer their survey, and then I was asked by the Republican Party to answer its survey. And the way I looked at it, Quintin, was it is nonpartisan, but both of those parties were asking for our views, and I felt that I should reply to both. That respects the fact that my community is bipartisan, and so I felt that was respectful.
Now, quickly, how bipartisan will you be on the board if elected?
Education isn't about being partisan. Education is about the working to achieve for all students. I just don't see that there's a partisan part of it. I mean, we want the best for all of our students, and we work towards that. I just never found that in all my 20 years of working with the school district and all the different roles that I had, that partisan politics didn't make a difference. I mean, it's about, as educators, we work on evidence-based practices. We know what works, and we know of approaches to take to make things work, and that's not about politics.
Dr. Carol Temple, thank you for your time, and again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin.
You're very welcome.